My name is Christy Finnison, and today I am presenting a Twitter analysis I conducted on posts containing the hashtag Women in STEM. A little about this data. The Twitter dataset for Women in STEM contains 273,012 tweets, 110,484 unique users, and 167,092 retweets, which is about 61% of the total tweets in the dataset. The data spans just over a year, beginning in January of 2015 and ending in February of 2016. A quick look at the methods that I used to complete this analysis. I loaded the Twitter dataset for Women in STEM and used Python to perform regression analysis, geoanalysis, and sentiment analysis. I then exported my data to Excel and prepared it for an ArcGIS feature layer. I loaded my feature layer into ArcGIS Online to create maps demonstrating top posting US states, sentiment averages for those top states, and locations of the top followed users. Then using these maps, I created this GIS story map. I was curious to see which hashtags were most commonly included with the Women in STEM hashtag and found that most of the hashtags reflected women or science in some way. I then created this word cloud to demonstrate the most commonly accompanying hashtags with Women in STEM. Women in Tech was the top performing hashtag. All of these hashtags did represent women or science except for the news hashtag. I then decided to analyze the top US states posting about women in STEM and found that California was the most active. As you can see in this map, California's total posts numbered 3,251 posts. Meanwhile, if we look at New York, there were 2,876 posts, and North Carolina had 748 posts. I also created this table chart to reflect the statistics on how the top 10 states performed in terms of posting about women in STEM. I was then curious to see if there was a correlation with population size and found some correlation. As you can see in this map, the yellow circles represent population size while the green circles still represent the number of posts in that state. The 6 top population size states were all included in my top 10 posting states: California, Texas, Florida, New York, Pennsylvania, and Illinois. I then decided to find these sentiment averages for each of the top posting states and noticed that the sentiment was positive for the states, which is to be expected since Women in STEM is commonly used as an encouragement for women. I noticed that New York had the most positive sentiment, and that may suggest that conditions for women in STEM are favorable in New York, which makes sense since New York does contain a pretty large city infrastructure that may be a common destination for women in STEM to go work. I was then curious to see who is being followed the most, or who are the influencers in this data set. And I recognized most of the names in this list. Barack Obama was the top followed user, followed by CNN and Nat Geo. I did notice that there was a correlation between the influencers who did provide location and the ranking of the top posting states. So 3 of the influencers were posting from New York, which had ranked second among the top posting states. This included MTV, TED Talks, and Hillary Clinton. DC had ranked 4th in the top posting states, and Barack Obama and the White House both tweeted about women in STEM from DC. And then Washington, which had ranked 8th among the top posting states, was also reflected in this influencer list, and it was Microsoft who had posted from Washington. So from this correlation, I noticed that there may be some implication that the presence of influencers in a state might be positively correlated with that state's conversation about women in STEM. I was then curious to see who's being retweeted, and I wanted to see if there were any similarities between the users who were most retweeted. To do so, I went to Twitter and looked up each of the users. 2 of the accounts were no longer active, but the rest of the accounts were. So the WISE campaign was a campaign for gender balance in science, technology, and engineering. Conserve Fights was a professor. Have Fun is a crowdfunding platform. NGC Project is an organization for K-12 girls. For Women in Science is actually a program by L'Oreal. The Lindau Nobel is an organization that hosts laureate meetings with young scientists. USPTO is a governmental organization focused on intellectual property and policy. Ella K. Dawala is an editor and self-proclaimed planetary scientist. And among all these users, I noticed that most of the users were organizations, aside from the professor and the planetary scientist. So, in conclusion, this Twitter analysis revealed a few key trends. I noticed that the most common hashtags that were included with the Women in STEM hashtag mostly reflected women and science or tech. And there was some positive correlation between the states posting the most and their population size. I also noticed that all states' average sentiment scores were positive, which was to be expected since Women in STEM is used as an encouragement for women. The top followed users or influencers were all public figures or organizations, and there was a positive correlation between the presence of influencers in a state and those states ranking in the top posting states, which may imply that the presence of influencers in a state contributes to the conversation on women in STEM. Finally, I noticed that the most retweeted users were mostly organizations, implying that women in STEM is used in promotions. And in the case of L'Oreal, the presence of women in STEM implies that perhaps it's being used as part of their corporate social responsibility or public relations strategy. If you view the story map on your own, you'll find that you can interact with the map to look at each of these statistics. Thank you.